right. We are reading, I don't want to do red and green. It seems kind of Christmassy, but I might have to. My black marker is missing. Oh no. The Works of Vermin by Hiron. I'm gonna say Ennes. The Works of Vermin by Hiron Ennes. Here is the book. We got a lot to talk about. Well, not really a lot. I only read the first part because there's 3 different parts, but we've got stuff to talk about in the Works of Vermin. Hey everybody. Okay, so we are talking about the Works of Vermin today. I'm sorry if you can't really see that. Don't worry, I will use a different color to write down the people. But this is the book. It's by Hiron, I'm going to say Ennes. This is the inside. I took the dust jacket off, but I'll show you that in a second. But this is another Twisted Retreat book that I got. And for a book that's about a lot of bugs, I'm very much enjoying myself so far. This is the inside. The back. And now that I've finished the first part, I know who all those 3 people are also, which is pretty cool. Adjust the camera slightly. Bless you, Penny. So that's the hardcover. This is what the cover itself looks like. The Works of Vermin. That's the full cover. I'll read what it's about and then move right into the review. He was sent to kill a pest. Instead, he found a monster. Enter the decadent, deadly city of Tiliard, a metropolis carved into the stump of an ancient tree. In its canopy, the pampered elite warp minds with toxic perfume. In its roots, gangs of exterminators hunt a colossal worm with an appetite for beauty. In this complex, chaotic city, Guy Moulène has a simple goal: keep his sister out of debt. For her sake, he'll take on any job, no matter how vile. As an exterminator, Guy hunts the uncanny creatures that crawl up from the river. These vermin are all strange and often dangerous. His latest quarry is different. A centipede the size of a dragon with a deadly venom and a ravenous taste for artwork. As it digests Tiliard from the sewers to the opera houses, its toxin reshapes the future of the city. No sane person would hunt it if they had the choice. Guy doesn't have a choice. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So firstly, there's a Penny trying to invite herself into the filming. Flippy flippy. Alright. Maybe we'll do dark green instead. Alright, so our first character that we meet, that's green to them. Okay, whatever. Is Guy Moulène. He is the first, well, he's the first that we know who they are. There is a second character introduced right away as just Mystery Gentleman. And I'm pretty sure I know who that is now, so we'll get there. So the first person that's introduced is this mystery guy who shows up, here we go, who shows up in Tiliard aboard a smuggler ship, and it distinctly says he only has 3 items on him, 3 different blades, a sword he never uses, a knife he uses often, and then a little pinprick like needle thing. And those are the 3 blades that he's brought with him, and he is apparently, he's hunting something. That is all that we know right now. Hunting something. As of right now, we don't know what it is. So now we go to Guy, and it introduces him. Well, he's having this weird dream about working at the opera house as a kid still. The kids, because they were seen as like lesser than, were blindfolded and had cotton stuff in their ears, so they couldn't take in any of the plays or things like that. So he's, in his dream, he's blindfolded, leading a woman to her seat, which they had to memorize by heart because they're blindfolded. And in his dream, he's like plucking earthworms out of her hand. It was very strange. But then he wakes up because his sister kind of kicks him in the side. So he lives with younger sister. Tyro. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I want to make sure, because I wrote it down, but I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Tyro. It's either Tyro or Tiro, but that's his younger sister that he's taking care of because their parents are dead. So he's taking care of her. And then they also live with Don. He is ex-soldier. So Guy and Don are exterminators. And then they have a boss, a woman named 3. So these are the characters that we have so far at this point. Guy's waking up and he's getting ready for his day of work. Apparently they have a job to do. So him and Dawn, they meet 3 and they go walking through their city, and you get a good imagery of what their city is like. It kind of makes me think of, if you ever seen Ready Player 6, how the houses are all stacked on top of each other and like narrow walkways connecting buildings to places. There's like high ups, like spaces where like there's murky water that you don't want to go into, things like that. It seems very dystopian in how it's set up, but they're going to this next job. And so the person that called in this complaint just said, there is a very huge bug, please come deal with it. And 3 says the guy that saw the bug apparently gouged his eyes out. And 3 isn't taking it seriously. She thinks it's funny, and like has a very callous personality, very very harsh, very abrupt. She does not like that she has to work with these two. You can kind of get the sense that she thinks she's better than them, but they're all working the same job. They all live in the lower city is what it's called. So there's the lower city and the upper city. The upper city is where all the rich people, all the elite live. And 3 is from the upper city, but for some reason got sent down to the lower city. And so Guy and Dawn, having both been born and raised in the lower city, she thinks she's better than them because of that. So they're going to this job, and 3's just talking about how it's probably nothing. It's probably just a group of hallucinogenic bugs, because apparently they have those. They have bugs that cause mad hallucinations. A really weird, like, they've got really weird hybrids of bugs that you know the name of, and you're like, that's not what they do. And that's what they think it is. They said hallucinogenic chimeras. And so if you get bit by them, you're mad sick for days. And like, they can make themselves appear and look like anything because they can make you hallucinate. So they're going to the sewer to go investigate this bug, this giant bug. And so 3 and Dawn, they're like, it's gonna be normal. Guy is taking it seriously, that he thinks like, is there really a bug that big? That's not even in the rule book, because they have like a handbook for their company that they work with. And they're like, yeah, that's because it doesn't exist. Like, Guy has a very interesting way of looking at life. He really did work as a kid in the theater, but they really did blindfold the kids and like stuff their ears so they couldn't hear or see any of the plays. But Guy would sneak in and listen when he knew no one would catch him, and like his mind is full of like all those plays that went on, and he's got a very fanciful imagination, but also very depressed. You can tell this dude is depressed. All he does is work. He's banned from the opera, which we'll talk about in a little bit. He's banned from the opera, and he's worried that his debts that he's incurred will be passed on to his sister if he dies in the line of duty while working his job. So all he could think about is how can he make extra money to pay off these debts so that his sister doesn't have to take on the responsibility of his debts. And I did not nap enough, man. And so he's got all these thoughts in his head while we're going down into the sewer. The only thing we know about Don at this point is that he used to be a soldier. Yeah, he's a vet. That's all we know about him. Tiro, she's still sleeping when they leave. So they go into the sewer, and they're going through, like, the sewer. I don't even know. Like, you know how you see it in the movies when people are hunting alligators in sewers, or like the Ninja Turtles and shit? It's like that. It's a sewer. And they get to a point where they find a big hole in the wall that leads down. And 3 is like, ha, whoever spots it got it, because Guy was the one who saw the hole and first threw a bug bomb in there, and it like illuminated there were critters in there. So 3 is like, ha ha, you saw it, you get to go down. And he's like, I hate you. I simply hate you, and goes down because that's his boss. So as he's getting lower, he's like freaking himself out, which is something I've learned while reading this book that he's really good at doing, freaking himself out. So as he's getting lower, his mind is looking at all this darkness and just making up shit. So it gets to the point where when he does get to the bottom and he starts spraying his mixture, his pesticide mixture, Penny, get down, babies, his pesticide mixture and stuff, in his head, he does think he's killing the regular type of bugs that they kill, but then he comes across something that freaks him completely the fuck out, and he turns and runs. And what he comes across is what he says is this big, giant, I am not good at drawing thing, so... Please hold. But he said he saw a giant, he called it a centipede, but he said it was the size of a dragon. So what happens is the centipede, we're going to call him Senti, because I don't really know, yeah. So Senti is just chilling down there, you know, minding its business. This would be the eyes, right? Centipedes have those, and it's got like this weird big mouth with like spiraling teeth, but when he looks into it, he sees like all these colors and swirls and shit, like it's like psychedelic. Psychedelic, baby. But so it's psychedelic, but it kind of, as he's running, its pincers kind of get him on the ear, and he's shouting, pull me up, and they're like, he gets away just in time because it was about to like eat him, but he gets away just in time, and he gets up there and he's like, the thing is fucking huge. And 3's like, what? He's like, I don't know what it is, but it's the size of a goddamn dragon. It's fucking huge. And 3 looks in the hole and she's like, bro, there's nothing there. And he's like, what? Something got me. And she goes, you probably got bit by a fucking chimera. You know they cause hallucinations. It bit you. You got it in your system. It made you see something scary so you wouldn't kill it. That's what happened. And he's just persisting. He's like, that is not what I saw. That is not what happened. And she like low-key threatens him, like, are we trying to report this to the higher ups then? And like, it's bad for him because he has so many infractions on his record already. So he's like, fine, no. Meanwhile, Dawn is the one that actually is worried about Guy, because Guy is bleeding because he got bit on the ear. And so they're like, we should at least take him to the medic or something. And Guy's like, no, because he's like, no more debt, which felt, I don't know how many hospital appointments I've put off just because the bills are ridiculous, even with insurance. And I promise you, Guy does not have insurance. I don't think anybody in this world has insurance. So Three's like, fine, you two go home. I'll write up a report. Dawn, you're in charge of making sure he doesn't die in the next 24 hours. Because when you get bit by a chimera, one of those things, it'll either make you really, really sick and then you die, or it just makes you really, 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 really sick. So they go home, and Three's like making fun of him the whole time, like, maybe someone else will see your dragon. Like, and that's what she consistently calls it through at least part 1, is his dragon. She goes, no signs of your dragon yet. No one else has reported your dragon. You still think you saw a dragon? She's kind of a bitch, and I love it. So that part ends with them going back so that he can rest and Dawn can watch over him. And then we get introduced to another character. Her name is Aster. And she is at an execution all by herself, which is apparently completely embarrassing. But she's at a public execution. Someone tried to assassinate one of the leaders of Tiliard. What the hell is his name? I didn't write down his name, and I realized I was supposed to for this. But while I was writing up my notes, I didn't feel like going and finding my book, which was in a different room, and getting it to find the name. So I just would underscore did this. The Grand Marshal, Maximin Sorav. So we're just going to call him Grand Marshal. So Grand Marshal is leading a trial for a man who tried to execute him. Apparently this is common. Apparently a lot of people keep trying to execute the Grand Marshal. And so they determined he was going to die. They just didn't determine the way. And so this is what all the elite people and the rich people show up to the trial for, is the showmanship of how this man dies. Sometimes it's very quickly. Sometimes it's very slowly. Apparently they have man-eating tulips growing somewhere that they could just throw him to those and he would die very slowly, be eaten alive by tulips. Death by tulips was not something I thought I would read about, but apparently that's an option in this city, is you can get thrown to the man-eating tulips. So she's there by herself, and she's like, woe is me, I'm by myself, how embarrassing. And she's thinking about her friend, Lisbeth. That's how it's spelled, but it's spelled weird. But her name is Lisbeth. And she's thinking about her friend and how her friend was supposed to be there, but she's not. And her friend is currently engaged to a bishop. We're going to put her up here. I wrote her name down. I went to the wrong page. I take notes for every book that I read. I take notes. So I make sure that I have everything that I need to talk about, and I will always reference this if you see me looking down. I'm referencing this to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I'm glad I looked, because her friend's name is actually Elspeth. Okay. Elspeth. With a P. So she is engaged to a bishop. And she did not show up for the execution. What they had planned, her and Aster planned to go together because they had been friends ever since they were in like a hospital together. She didn't show up, so she's like, oh, I'm by myself. But while she's sitting by herself, someone else shows up and sits next to her. This man's name is Mallory, and he apparently is the talk of the town because of how strangely he dresses. Like, his clothes are still fancy, but they're very outdated, and he always has this, like, he has this top hat on that it's like, why are you wearing that? And he's the talk of the town because he's just come to town, and he's very, they call him weird. Like, everybody's making up stories about reasons why he's here and stuff like that. So Mallory sits next to Aster. You know what? I feel bad that he's this small. He is actually a main character. So let's make Mr. Mallory bigger. All they did was give him a bigger head. But that's whatever. So Mallory sits next to Aster, and they start talking, and they're kind of vibing. They're kind of hitting it off. And Aster is kind of kind of feeling this dude. He's kind of cute. Okay, and he's sitting next to me. All right, cool. So she starts to try and be like, you know, suave and like, you know, cutesy and shit. She starts coughing really bad because she has a sickness. I relate it to tuberculosis, is the way it sounds like it's what she has, but it's whatever this world's version of it is, where she also is coughing up little, like, what she doesn't notice, because I noticed when I finished her part, she doesn't notice that she did this, but she had coughed up some, like, living thing, kind of like the story of the guy who had like a little tree growing inside of him. It's kind of like that. She coughed up some weird little tree living like organism, but she doesn't notice that she did that. I'm like, how do you not notice that? And you had this affliction, this disease, like your whole life. But people usually, when she starts coughing, they kind of go, ew, because they think she's contagious, but she's not. But people think she's contagious, but he doesn't like leave her. He doesn't go, ew, icky, yuck, and leave. He gives her a handkerchief. It's like embroidered, has his initials and stuff on it. She thinks it's really pretty. He gives it to her for her coughing fit, and they leave the execution for her to go cough and not disturb everybody. And he stays with her, and she's like, wow, he's sticking with me. He didn't leave in disgust. And she's like, I'm feeling this. I like this. So she smokes, she takes a smoke break, and he is like, aren't those bad for you? And she goes, I'm literally dying. She's like, it's nothing worse than what's already happening to me. And he's just like, touche. But so they sit and talk for a little bit, but then he's like, I gotta bounce. And she's like, well, how about you tell me where you live so that I can drop your handkerchief off once I finish cleaning it? Because, you know, she's trying to get in there. And he just goes, oh, I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again. And then he just like disappears. And she's like, oh, damn it. But she's also excited because she still has his handkerchief, which means she has an option to return it to him if she ever sees him again, and she thinks she's going to see him again. So that's where that leaves off. We go back to Guy, and he's all better, kind of. He's a little, he's convinced of what he saw. He knows he saw something. He thinks 3 doesn't believe him. Dawn is just convinced he's stressed the fuck out. But 3 is like, whatever. We're not reporting it. If we report, it has to go in the manual. And people who get their names put in the manual and have things named after them, usually they either have gotten eaten alive by a bug or they're dead somehow. Like, even Guy's like work equipment, his hazmat suit and stuff that he has is a hand-me-down from the last person, who apparently went mad and jumped into like the toxic river that flows through their city. So 3's like, you really want to report it? You really want to put it in the freaking manual? And he's like, no. But he also has to go to her because she's the welder, and his equipment got banged up during the fight with the dragon. And so she's fixing his stuff up. His sister, Tiro, goes with him. She's a very tomboy. You can tell right away that she is a tomboy. Wearing pants, her hair's always messed up. She doesn't care about her appearance and stuff, and she's always like exchanging words with the boys that sit on the rafters and like yell and catcall people and stuff. And like she's growing up. I think she's like 14 right now, and Guy is getting worried because she's getting to, you know, the age of becoming a woman, and he's like, I don't know what the fuck to do about that. And Dawn's like, you should probably buy her a dress to start. Those pants, her pants are like, you know, high waters, where like people would make a joke that you're like preparing for the flood. Her pants are that high on her. So Guy's like, well, I gotta make some extra money for that then. That's another expense. And then 3, when she fixes his equipment, charges him too. And like, they haggle on that price, because he was like, absolutely not for this hand-me-down shit. But they haggle back and forth, but at the end of the day, he still owes her money. And he has to get Tyro a new dress. Like, things are piling up, and he doesn't know what to do. So we go into his second, he goes into his, what do we call it? Nope. After that chapter, after that little part, I almost jumped ahead. We go back to Aster. She's doing her job as a perfumer. To me, perfumers are kind of like spellcasters. So she works for the Grand Marshal. and he has to give like a speech tonight about because of his assassination attempt and surviving the assassination attempt, they want him to give a speech, and he hates giving speeches and blah blah blah. But as the Grand Marshal's perfumer, she puts together scents that kind of like manifest different things. Like there's one to make you taller, there's one to make people not able to say no to you. There's like, they're like manifestations, but when you put them on and people smell them, it actually happens. So for me, they're like spellcasters. Perfumer, maybe also a witch. So Aster is a perfumer. I'm calling her a perfume witch because that's essentially what this is. So she's getting him ready to go, and he's telling her, oh, you're going to the opera tonight, aren't you? And she's like, yes, I'm meeting my friend Lisbeth there. And he's like, ah, good, okay. And he wants her to find him a dancer. It's not really sure what he wants them for, but I'm pretty sure it's for, you know, sexy times. So while she's there, she has to procure a dancer for him for some upcoming event he has going on. And she gets him ready, she gets herself ready, she goes to the opera. She had helped Elspeth with her dress earlier, and Elspeth had been talking about some mystery dude that she met. She actually met Mallory, and Aster's like, oh, you met him too? And Elspeth's like, I invited him to the opera, and Aster's like, oh, that's wonderful. And she's like, you should come with. And that's how she's now going to the opera. She got invited by Elspeth, but she's there to also buy a dancer for the Grand Marshal, and she's hoping she'll run into Mallory. She does. She finds Mallory first. He said Elspeth went somewhere, and I'm here. And so she and him are once again vibing, shooting the shit. It looks like there is a real connection between them. And then Lisbeth shows up. Or Elspeth. Why do I keep calling her Lisbeth? I think I just really like that name. But Elspeth shows up, and she's got this really extravagant gown on that has like moths flying around it, like by design. It was very interesting. There is a lot of stuff with bugs. Bugs in this book. So she comes down and she says hi to both of them. And Aster points out that her husband, I'm just going to make him little down here because as far as part 1, there's not much of him in it. She points out that the bishop has another girl on his arm. And Elspeth is like, I better go be, you know, fiancé so he doesn't trade me aside for someone else, because she wants to marry him because he's got money. And so she leaves them alone to their devices again, and now they're getting ready to watch the play. She has another coughing fit, and they're like, you should really go see a doctor or something. She's like, for what? There's nothing they can do. Like, that's a big point they make in this part is she won't go see any doctors because there's nothing that can be done. So she refuses to go because there's like, what's the point? There's nothing that can be done. So after those, we're waiting for the opera to start. We jump back to Guy, and Guy has a second job. I'm pretty sure he's basically a prostitute, but acts too. So Guy sneaks into this rich woman's house, and she's pretending to they start doing it, and she's like, we have to hurry before my husband gets home, and da-da-da, and he's like doing her on top of the banquet table full of food and stuff. And then her husband shows up, and it's weird because at first you're like, wow, Guy is really fucking up really early in the book. And then all of a sudden the guy stops strangling him and is like, you're not really into it tonight, are you? And then it turns out that this couple pays Guy to do different scenarios where he'll like pretend to be her lover sneaking in while her husband's away and gets caught and gets like beaten to death, and then the wife goes, oh my god, I'll never love another man except for you, and da da da. And while he pretends to play dead on the floor, they like have sex on the table. Apparently that's something they pay him to do regularly, like once a month, I believe, under the guise that he's their exterminator, for silver bugs. I'm just gonna put rich couple right here. I think they're gonna have more in the next part, but in this part, they're just right here. Lovers to Guy, I guess I'll put. So they pay him to do that once a month. He'll come in pretending to be an exterminator, and then he'll be starting to have sex with the wife. The husband walks in, he gets enraged, beats up Guy, strangles him, Guy pretends to be dead, and they have passionate sex on the table. So before they leave, this time the man goes, next time let's spice things up a little bit. How about a home invasion? Okay, you break into the house and go from there. And so it's planned things that they do. And since Guy really loves the theater and he really loves the opera and all that, he acts the stuff out, and they pay him, and he's like, okay, cool. He is a little bit ashamed of what he's doing, because he technically, I'm pretty sure this is considered prostitution, but he gets paid really well. They always give him a bunch of food and stuff too, so he's like, okay, whatever. And we get just a little bath scene of Guy, Don, and Tiro all washing up, and Don notices some of the bruises and like the choke lines on his neck while Guy's cleaning, and Don literally just goes, you could do better, you deserve better. And Guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about, like he don't want to talk about it. But I'm suspecting, and this hasn't been confirmed yet, and I could be wrong, but I think Don is in love with Guy. I really do. I think Don is in love with Guy, and so whenever Don sees Guy come back from going to that once a month fantasy thing that he's doing with the rich people, it's either filling him with jealousy or it's making him worry. One of those two, or both. But that's my suspicion right now, and the more that I read into part one, I'm like, I'm pretty sure someone's confessing their love by the end of this book, but also I'm pretty sure if this happens, if Don confesses his love for Guy, and Guy starts to realize he has the same feelings, Don's gonna die. Hands down. Hand to God. Don's gonna die. So, we jump back to Aster. Aster and Mallory are watching this opera. It's a battle between two people. And there's like a lead dancer who's like an unopposed winner, because apparently the way the things work here is Penny, make good choices. Don't harass the old man right now. No, don't do it, babe. Don't do it. But what they do is they'll act out like a fight scene where you know who the winner is. The winner is the lead dancer, who's unopposed and always wins. And it's really weird that they do that, and they're like placing bets on him versus the other dancer, and I'm like, but in the script he's supposed to die, so why are we placing bets thinking that he's not gonna die? That part's really confusing to me. Still, I haven't kind of worked out how the opera works yet. But Mallory knows the challenger, who's the understudy to the real Guy, who apparently got so hungover that he didn't feel like dying today. So the challenger and dude, they duel. The challenger kind of goes off script and wins the fight despite what actually happened. The dogs are fighting in the background, so you're gonna hear barking. I'm just gonna roll with it. And so people are like excited but angry. They're like, that's not how it's supposed to go, and I lost my bet, I won my bet, like things like that. It's weird. But Aster, she gets a little jealous because she notices the challenger, the fighter, the dude, has a handkerchief tied around his neck that looks just like hers, the one she still has from Mallory. So she's like, Y'all must be close. And Mallory's like, he's a really good friend, but that's about it. He doesn't say, oh, we're lovers or da-da-da. And so Astra has a little bit of hope again. She's like, oh, okay, cool. All right. And so, also their plays, I forgot to note this, their plays are all about the history of their city. And the history of their city is based on whatever play is being put on. Apparently, it changes like that. They're like, oh, this is actually what happened. Here's a play for it. People want to do things that are memorable so that they will become a play at the opera, so that their life would turn into a play and stuff. It's very strange. So for them, all of their history and stuff, while probably in books out in the library and stuff, are told through the opera. So I thought that was interesting. Being that this is a very dystopian society, it would make sense if, like, reading was something that was for the elite only, and so some other ways to reenact or learn about what happened in the past was to do plays. But they also don't allow anybody from the lower cities to see them. If you're poor, you don't get to see these. So it's kind of cool at the same time. It's like, of course, it's the rich being the rich. Of course. So while they're there, weird things happen. So what happens next is happening simultaneously with this. So while Astor and Mallory are watching the play, Guy, Don, and 3 get a job in the upper city. They're like, that's weird. We don't normally get jobs in the upper city, but we just got called to the upper city. And so they get there, and they have these rival companies called Sect something or other. It's not there for long, I'll just say that. So the rival company Sect is there. Borsch. And they're called Borsch and Sons, by the way. I didn't put that down. But so those people are there, and 3's like, the fuck you doing? This is our job. And they're like, fuck you, we got called on this job. And there's a guy there. I'm going to put him right here. He was Sarge. I'm just going to call him Sarge. But he was Don's old sergeant in the war. And so this is kind of where we find out that Don got the short end of a stick. So we find out 2 things. One, Don's name is not really Don. The Grand Marshal is a petty motherfucker. Petty motherfucker. So Don was in the war. Grand Marshal's son was in the war. Grand Marshal's son died in the war, but somehow on the papers it got accidentally reported that Don was the one that died, not the Grand Marshal's son. So when all of the veterans, when all the soldiers are returning from the war, the Grand Marshal is there to greet his son because he thinks his son is still alive. Come to find out, it was a mistake, and his son's the one that died, not Don. So this is not Don's fault in any way, shape, or form. This is not his fault. Don didn't know that he was reported dead. He came home and people were like, holy shit, you're alive? Dude, they told us you died. And he's like, what? I'm dead? Like, he even has a fucking tombstone and stuff. So what happens is the Grand Marshal gets so pissed off that his son died and Don survived that he has Don legally declared dead. So Don has to live in the lower city with a different name and stuff because he's now been legally declared dead because the Grand Marshal was so pissed off at that misinformation and that his son was the one that actually died. So that's why Don is down in the lower city working for Borsch and Sons as an exterminator. Dead not dead soldier is what I'll put. So that's Don's little backstory of what we get for him. But so he used to, be under this guy's command. And this guy is the head of Sect now. So let's just put you right there. But they're like, oh my god, wow, it's good to see you. He goes, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to a dead man. A joke about it. But Don's like, ha ha ha, yeah. Yeah, you are. And so while 3 is on the phone trying to figure out who's supposed to be on the job, Sarge, Don, and Guy decide to go follow this trail of destruction that's leading into, it's the museum next to the opera house. And Guy has these tattoos on him that are kind of like, it's like a restraining order. Like, he's not allowed in the opera house because when he was a boy working there, he was a poor who got caught watching plays and learning and memorizing them. So they banned him from the opera house. And so that's why he works where he works now. But these tattoos, the way they work, they're like binds or bindings. So the closer he gets to the opera house, the tighter and more painful they get around his body to make him go the opposite way of the opera house. So they're at the museum across the street from the opera house, and the binds are kind of tight, but not like, holy shit, I'm gonna die tight. And he has to go into the lower levels of the museum with Sergeant Don. They're following a destruction of art. So, like, there's pieces of art, like paintings that have been munched on, statues missing pieces that something took a big bite out of. They're just following this trail of half-consumed art, and they're going, man, something really went through this shit, huh? And so while they're doing that, Guy does the typical thing that happens in a horror movie where they get split up from the group. Like, he, like, turns around and blinks and looks back and they're gone, and he's like, the fuck? So he's looking for them, calling out Dawn and calling out Sergeant. He has a real name, but trust me, he was only in this book for 2 seconds. And eventually he trips over something, and it's Sergeant's body. 2 seconds, see? But Sergeant's body looks hella different. He's obviously dead, but his body is swollen. It's a different color. He's got weird deformities that just seem to have rapidly grown. Like his body was being like reshaped and redesigned, basically. And so, Guy is like, what in the absolute fuck? And he can't find Dawn, but he's like, what the hell? And he's looking at this body like, it's his dragon. He knows it's his dragon. So he looks up and he sees his dragon, Senti. And he just freaks out because he's like, it's bigger up close. Its mouth, when it opens, has like, he said it looked like this. There was all these, for the sake of this, its teeth, and like a swirling, like, psychedelic void going on in the middle. And he is like, he freaks out. Mouth. You know the joke, well, at least he didn't panic after somebody does something. Bro, at least he didn't panic. He lays everything on this. He throws all of his bug bombs. He literally does all of his different bug, like, spray mixtures and shit. And he's just like, spraying and bombing everything. And not the best idea because, one, it also disrupts the infrastructure of the tunnel that they're in. But two, Senti kind of, I guess its defense mechanism is when that happens, it split open and like 24 babies came out or something. It was like 24 babies. Yep, 12, sorry. 12 babies, but are as large as fucking, they're like the size of dogs, come falling out of Senti, who is now, this thing died after its babies burst out of it, but the babies, Dawn shows up and like last minute is able to like stop Senti from eating Guy, but Dawn gets kind of in the throes of Senti, and that's where this part ends for now. And it goes back to Aster and Mallory, and they're outside, and all of a sudden they just hear screaming and like panic. And they look around and they're not entirely sure what's happening, but something's fucking happening. Between the opera and the museum, the streets are just fucking pandemonium. There's a big hole in the ground, and someone said there's these bugs, these creatures coming out of the ground. And so everyone's panicking. The air is being filled with all of those fumes that Guy was just spraying that just kind of went right up into the up. And they're like, we should leave the situation. Two smartest people in this goddamn book. They were like, nope, bye. So they leave. Aster makes sure that Elspeth is with her husband so that they can leave. The bishop is convinced this was an assassination attempt on him. So he calls Grand Marshal. It's like, they're trying to fucking kill me. Do something about it. You're the goddamn Grand Marshal. So the Grand Marshal sends their version of the police out. and they're just like gassing people and beating people and moving them out the way to go figure out what's going on. But Aster and Mallory have already left. And so we find out that Aster got sick during the war when their cities were being bombed. Aster was on a trolley, I believe is what it was, with her mom and her dad, and the area they were in got bombed, and the trolley filled with gas. And her dad said, "Don't breathe it in, cover your mouth." But Aster, being a child, didn't register that in time, and she breathed in a bunch of the toxin, and that's why she has the sickness that she has now. Both of her parents died from it, because the trolley crashed and it was a traumatic mess. So her parents died in that. She got this disease from it, and so this is all happening, and she's kind of having flashbacks to that, because this is almost the exact same. Like, they're filled with smoke, people died, she got sick. So they get out of that. They go to Mallory's house, which is like this decrepit building that's falling apart that he says he inherited from his father. And Mallory lets her get cleaned up. She's wearing a theater robe, it looks like, instead of her clothes, because he's washing them. And when she comes out of the bath, she realizes that he's fallen asleep, and she sees something on his arm. It's a debtor's tattoo. So she has the tattoos of someone who's in debt, which that's a thing here. If you have any type of debt, it gets tattooed on you until you pay it off. And so she at this point's like, is he lying about who he is? Like, is this really not his house and he just kind of broke in because it's all decrepit and old and he's just been wearing these clothes? Is he pretending to be somebody that he's not? Is he lying to me? And she's like offended but also tired. So she's like, I'm mad as shit, but I'm going to sleep. So he's sleeping on like the end bed, like where you would put like a footstool or type thing to store your blankets and stuff in. He's sleeping on that, and she gets in the bed, and she's like, I'm still mad at him, but and goes to bed. In the morning, she gets tracked down by the Grand Marshal's like second-hand man, who apparently is very kill happy, and he wants to kill Mallory because she was in a house with another man. That's very unbecoming. And Aster convinces him not to kill Mallory, saying Elspeth is really good friends with him, because this guy apparently is in love with Elspeth even though she's engaged. So they let Mallory live, but Mallory was dropping mad hints that he was going to body this dude if he tried to kill him. Mallory was like, I would hate to fight you because, Aster, you need an escort home. If I fight him, you won't have an escort. And I'm like, I hope we get to see this dude fight, because he turns into a completely different person when that dude just threatens to kill him. He's like, I promise you, it's not going to go the way you think. I was like, okay, Mallory, okay. But, so she leaves, and that's where her part ends. Guy wakes up in the hospital, and 3 is there. And 3 is like, of all the ways you could have fucked up, my guy. Of all the ways you could have fucked up, why this way? Why? And why do it while I'm there? Like, seriously? And so Guy's like, I'm fired, aren't I? And she's like, what the fuck do you think? We're all fired, Guy. And she's like pissed off, but also really calm. And so he's like, what's going on? She goes, they're gonna question you. Which apparently if they're questioning you, they also will beat the fuck out of you to get their answers. And he's like, where's Dawn? She's like, Dawn's being questioned right now. AKA, Dawn's getting the shit beat out of him because of you for answers. And Guy's like, what do I do? And 3's like, lie your ass off. Lie. Lie, deny. And he's like, okay, because he doesn't want to end up in even more debt and or be killed, because then either way, Tiro will end up with his debt. He has so much debt that he cannot take on anymore. And so he leaves his hospital room. He tries to call the rich couple lovers, but a maid answers who has no idea who he is, doesn't think that they have an exterminator for Silverfist, so she hangs up on him. And he's just like, fuck, that was my one shot. And Dawn shows up, and he was like, you were calling to beg, weren't you? And Guy's like, what the fuck else am I supposed to do, yo? Like, what are we supposed to do? And Dawn goes, okay, well, you're next. And I know what 3 told you. Okay? I know what 3 told you. Do not do that. Tell the truth. And Guy's like, what is going on? He goes, I can't tell you anymore. You have to go find out for yourself. And so he goes and he meets this guy named Barnum. That's what I'm sure his name is, because I didn't write his name down either. I didn't think he'd be back. But I'm going to call him Barnum for now. In part 2, we will fix that. Barnum. Barnum says he is the head of an inspection organization in the city. He's the one who called Sect and Borsch to the site, and he's like, first of all, I'm just gonna lay it out there. You are fired from Borsch and Sons. Yeah, you're fired. Don's fired. 3's fired. But hear me out. Your dragon, as 3 has been calling it this whole time, and Guy's like, this fucking bitch. He's like, your dragon was real. Your dragon, when you sprayed it with all of that stuff, gave birth to the babies that were inside of it to, you know, make sure the babies lived. It died, but the babies are all out there. Now we have a problem because we have a city with a bunch of psychedelic centipede babies running around, and we've seen the brood parent. That bitch got huge. These things are going to grow fast. These things are going to cause problems. We're gonna need workers to solve that problem, and you've had the best track record with it. From what I can, you've had the best track record, because basically Guy got bit on the ear and survived. Sarge got bit, died. But I think Sarge's bite was more severe, but still, they're like, if everybody dealt with this thing, you've got the best track record. So, and he's like, so you are fired from the other company, but here is a new contract. And if you sign this contract, you will work with, and turns out Don and 3 have also signed those contracts with a new company that they're just calling Borsch. So Barnum, in the secret and like the other inspection, is also one of the Barnum like brothers, the Borsch brothers, who like the Borsch family line who started this thing, and he's starting a whole different section for specialty for getting rid of the new psychedelic bugs that have now infested the city, that need to be dealt with before they can, you know, grow and breed and keep the problem going. So part 1 ends with Guy signing a new contract along with Don and 3 to work under this new company to go hunting for the Senties babies. 12 baby Senties. So that's how part 1 ends. This book is very weird. I like it. It's not weird in a bad way. The characters are very interesting. You care about more than you do some of the others. You think Guy makes some dumbass decisions, but he's doing the best he can for his sister. You're worried about his sister because they keep worrying about her turning 15. They keep saying it's about that time. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And so this, you get the sense the Guy is just trying to do right by his sister because he has to take care of her because their parents are dead. He's trying to do right by her. You feel bad about Don and how he's actually a dead man. I'm curious about Aster and Mallory's parts in this, since as you saw when I read the description, they weren't mentioned in it, but they are. I'm pretty sure that is Aster and Mallory, because that's exactly how they're described in the book. So I'm curious why they weren't mentioned in the synopsis for how much they're in the book. And I'm pretty sure Mallory is the mystery gentleman also, just the way he's described. And then we get Guy in his exterminator costume in the museum tunnels. So, and if you look, they put a dragon on the side because he kept saying it was as big as a dragon. I think that was hilarious. But I'm interested to see what happens. I am about a third of a way through part 2 right now. But other than that, it's been an interesting read. I'm definitely going to finish it because I want to know what the hell's going on. It doesn't give me the vibe of a book I'm going to DNF. So, yay. But I'm really curious about what Aster's part in all of this is, because she is, of the 3, Aster and Mallory are the main characters of that portion, and I want to know what their part is and why they're there. It's clear Mallory is the mystery gentleman who's hunting something. That something that he's hunting is obviously sentient. But what is her purpose in this? And he was obviously drawn to her for a reason. Why? So this is going to be interesting to find out in the next portion. I am... Let's see, where am I? I'm right here on a chapter called Tulip Food. And then part 3 starts there. So I've got a good chunk, which I can finish in a weekend if I really try my hardest. But once I get there, we'll review it. So far, I'm enjoying the journey. I'm confused in some parts, really like some other parts. But, yep, that is part 1 of The Works... Wow. Bugs. The Works of Vermin by Hiron Ennes. Next week, I will be either doing a 3-book mini review or posting another book that I'm reading. I haven't decided yet. I don't usually decide until the Monday before I record. I am organized. Alright, I've got to go feed my dogs because this one's been staring at me for a good 20 minutes. I was supposed to feed them 20 minutes ago, and she looks like she knows how to tell time. So I'm going to go feed my babies, and you guys have a good night. Bye-bye.